Most people who watch this video usually have a specific problem, a problem they can't solve. This problem always makes them feel that they can't control their lives. This problem is the barrier that stands between a person and their ability to achieve. Let me tell you that I'm not a magician if I tell you that most people who watch this video, whether addicted to pornography, addicted to food, addicted to YouTube or social media, addicted to a certain type of drugs, or have a type of addiction to buying things they don't really need. Each of us has a certain type of addiction. This addiction varies from person to person and varies in degrees, but what brings us all together is the negative impact of this addiction on our lives. This addiction is called overindulgence or excessive indulgence in satisfying desires. The author of this book knows that excessive indulgence in satisfying desires is the compulsive pursuit of neurochemical rewards at the expense of their own happiness. Therefore, in this episode, we will talk about a very important idea, which is how the world has become dependent on pleasure and enjoyment in everything. In this book, we will focus on 4 important ideas. We will start by talking about the concept of satisfying desires, then we will focus on the concept of pleasure and the chemistry of the brain and its relationship to dopamine. After that, we will discuss the idea of restoring balance to the human brain. And finally, we will talk about how to overcome the psychological obstacles that lead you to worship your desires. The person who guarantees pleasure, the person who has an excess in satisfying desires, always has a certain psychology, and this psychology always makes them think about pleasure in a certain way. On the other hand, there are conditions that affect him and always make him want to indulge in desires. And we can summarize the reasons that lead to indulging in desires into 3 very important reasons. The first thing is that the human brain always seeks pleasure in a certain psychology in humans, that he is not just seeking to attain the material thing, but he enjoys much more the idea of feeling the pursuit of material pleasure, more than he enjoys the idea that he possesses the material thing he is seeking. For example, if you yourself are in need of a certain thing, you think about a specific food, you think about something you want to buy, you think about something erotic during the period. You are thinking about this thing. The idea that you yourself are seeking and reaching it gives you a much greater feeling of pleasure than if you were to obtain the same thing. When you own the thing, you don't have the same excitement that you have when you are striving to get it. This psychology in humans is related to the substance dopamine, which we will talk about in the second part of this video. As for the second thing, it is that industrial progress creates material abundance. The idea of increasing material pleasures in humans, the idea that humans are living and have many choices for anything they can obtain, this makes the person have an increasing feeling of dissatisfaction. If someone has a certain phone or possession, and there is something better than it, he will always be thinking about the new option, the option he does not have. And even if he has a better option, he may always think about other options. The idea that a person has different choices, the idea that a person has material abundance, this makes the search for pleasure constantly present in humans. And this leads us to the third and final idea, and it is the void. The void that exists within a person always stimulates his desire to consume excessively. As long as a person does not have a specific goal in life, does not have a specific need to focus on, he will always think about consuming more. He wants to consume something that makes him forget the life he is living, and therefore, a person must not be a suburb to the void. The desire that a person has is very much linked to brain chemistry, and the very important chemical substance that makes a person always seek pleasure is dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical substance present in the human body and is naturally released. Some people believe that dopamine is a hormone, but in fact, dopamine is considered a neurotransmitter or a neural transmitter, but at the same time, it performs some hormone functions. Dopamine is a neural transmitter present in the brain, naturally secreted, and sends nerve signals between cells. Dopamine has many biological benefits such as movement, memory, mood state, learning. Dopamine can be classified as a hormone even though it is not a hormone because it functions to help kidney functions and insulin production. Medical research says that there is a relationship between dopamine and neurological diseases such as psychiatric diseases and some other diseases like Parkinson's disease, which results from losing dopamine. Dopamine is not, as some people think, a pleasure-specific chemical, but dopamine is a chemical substance that stimulates you to seek pleasure, meaning that you are prepared and that you get something, not that you enjoy owning the thing itself, as mentioned in the first part of this episode. Dopamine is also released in a different way depending on the different activities you engage in. You will find that some activities release very high levels of dopamine. These activities vary from person to person, but in general, they are the activities that cause dopamine to be released at a much higher rate than what humans need. These activities include gambling, sex, pornography, shopping addiction, or drug addiction. On the other hand, there are some activities that release moderate to high levels of dopamine, but not at the same level as the aforementioned activities such as sex, pornography, or gambling. These activities include addiction to social media, addiction to games, or addiction to sugar. This leads us to a very important idea, which is the concept of pain and pleasure. Pain and pleasure are processed in the brain in the same area. A person who feels pain does not feel pleasure, and vice versa. You can think of it as a seesaw, where you are on one side experiencing pain and on the other side experiencing pleasure. There needs to be a reaction to get rid of the feeling of pain, especially when very high levels of dopamine are being released. Studies say that any cell in the human body, especially the brain, always seeks to reach a state called homeostasis or balance. The idea of balance is that you must always have a balance between pain and pleasure. Therefore, when you enjoy something too much, the pain increases significantly. As a result of the balance that the human body strives for, two very important things happen. First, the individual loses sensitivity to simple pleasures in life that they used to enjoy, and therefore, they constantly seek greater levels of pleasure. Watching pornographic movies is much more detailed, or much more violent, and the same applies to all different types of addictions. Humans always seek something much more than what they are used to in order to reach the same level of pleasure they are accustomed to. The other thing is that humans feel pain. Instead of feeling balanced, a normal person who has homeostasis or balance always wants to remain in a state of balance. They do not want to feel pain or excessive pleasure. They want a balance between the two. But a person who guarantees a certain thing and produces huge levels of dopamine becomes that the pain they have is the natural feeling. They always feel pain and are distressed because they are in a state of not getting pleasure, and the only solution is for them to obtain pleasure to regain balance again. The writer says that if you want to return to a natural state, you have to overcome addiction. You have to restore balance, make the pendulum between pain and pleasure level, reach a state of homeostasis or balance. In order for you to do this, you have a choice between two. Controlling pleasure is what the writer calls abstaining from pleasure. What is done here is what some people call dopamine fasting, trying to stop activities that produce very high levels of dopamine for a period ranging from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. The writer says that there are different strategies to help you refrain from pleasure. These strategies can be divided into 3 important types. The first is called spatial restrictions, which is the idea of creating a spatial distance between you and different sources of pleasure. For example, you can delete specific apps from your phone, such as those that lead you to watch pornography or engage in certain actions. This helps increase the spatial distance between you and the source of pleasure you enjoy. The second example is to place your phone far away from you to avoid using social media and reduce the impact of notifications on your work productivity. The third and final example is to distance yourself physically from people and places that may lead you to engage in harmful activities like pornography and drugs. If you live or work in a specific place where such activities are prevalent, you should try to distance yourself as much as possible. Additionally, if you have people around you who encourage such behaviors, you need to cut ties with them. This leads us to the second need, which is the temporal restriction strategy. This strategy involves setting a specific time frame for indulging in pleasure. For example, if you are addicted to games, you try to limit the time you spend playing by setting a specific time during the week when you play, rather than playing at any other time. The time period that contains you is very short, so as to reduce the impact of this pleasure on your life. As for the second example, you set a specific time to use the internet for entertainment needs, such as YouTube, social media, or other things that make you waste a lot of time without realizing it in the first place. This leads us to the third and final strategy, known as associational restrictions. These restrictions involve avoiding activities associated with satisfying desires. You see activities that indirectly lead you back to becoming addicted to what you are already addicted to. For example, if you are addicted to pornographic films and you are watching a regular series or movie, and the scenes in that series may include some nudity, it may prompt you to gradually think about watching pornographic films again. Another example is if you want to get rid of excess weight, but at the same time you are addicted to watching food videos, you will not be able to lose this weight, because watching these videos will always make you think about food and perpetuate your negative relationship with food and the excess weight you gain from that relationship. Therefore, you must avoid doing something like this that will eventually lead you back to food addiction. As for the third and final example, you may be addicted to gambling and playing with money, and you want to quit this addiction. However, on the other hand, you always have the passion to play different card games just for fun. Just playing card games makes you indirectly engage in something similar to gambling, gradually. Returning to the addiction of behaviors takes us to the second part of focusing on restoring balance to the brain, where you use relational pain or what is called therapeutic pain. The idea here is that you increase your pain tolerance, and the idea that increasing your pain tolerance pleases you by restoring balance to your brain. One famous example of using therapeutic pain is taking a cold shower or immersing yourself in icy water baths. What you are doing here is increasing physical pain to address your addictive problem. However, the author states that there is a significant difference between physical pain and what is known as self-harm. The concept of a person torturing themselves to increase their pain levels because they believe that this is how they can cope. Some individuals may think that they can burn themselves or physically harm themselves using a sharp object. And it is believed that this can help him increase the pain ratio and thus restore balance again. But the problem is that when a person does something like this, he can first hurt himself in the long run, and at the same time the issue can turn into an addiction to pain itself. So instead of trying to restore balance, the person turns out to be addicted to pain. Most of us know that he has a problem. Most of us know that he is addicted to something specific, but he has some psychological barriers and obstacles that prevent him from taking the step to overcome the addiction he has. The literature says that there are 4 different types of psychological punishments that a person goes through. These punishments make the person unable to take the step to overcome the desire that negatively affects his life. The first type of psychological punishment is called prioritizing long-term rewards, which means that you prioritize long-term rewards. The writer here says that you focus on using the part called the prefrontal cortex in humans, the part called the frontal lobe cortex, or what we can call the frontal lobe. What you are doing here is deliberately using the part and trying to focus on 3 very important things. These 3 things will help you overcome the problem of always seeking quick rewards and will help you prioritize long-term rewards. The first thing is that you determine the pre-existing commitments. If you have certain things that need to be done, you must specify this. You must plan your time correctly. It helps to escape from emptiness and different real-life problems. The author says that in order to overcome boredom, emptiness, and various problems in life, you need to focus on 4 different things. The first thing is volunteering. The idea that volunteering in a specific project always makes you busy and enables you to overcome emptiness. As a result, it reduces your search for pleasure by ensuring a certain activity. The second need is trying to build a new project, which may help you develop a specific skill that you can make money from, and, most importantly, escape from boredom and emptiness. The third need is learning something new, trying to dedicate part of your time to learning something new, which can help you reduce the chances of drifting towards seeking different pleasures. The fourth and final need is trying to express yourself, trying to bring out what's inside you. Here we have finished today's video. We hope we have helped you. Thank you for watching. We wish you good luck. Goodbye.